I read that like at the age of 19, it was even hard for you to open a sealed box,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
How do you go through moments like that?
Yeah, I think when I was 19 to like 25, I was mostly bedridden during that time. It was really hard for me to be able to walk and move. My skin cracked and bled from the tip of my foot to the tip of my head. I think it's important with a chronic illness conversation. People often want to create this self-help version of the conversation, right? They want to say, you can just think positively. You can just say this affirmation and haven't you ever heard of The Secret? You can just create your own reality, right?
Yeah.
A lot of those conversations have gotten this wrong because they're not acknowledging the reality of the physical harm. But I will never look someone in the face who is living with a chronic illness and say that your pain or your flare or your insecurity about what's going on with your body isn't real.
What are your thoughts about what can you do in order to prevent chronic illness? So you lived with, for about 30 years.
Yeah.
You lived with a chronic illness.
Yeah.
What is the hardest part that people don't talk about it?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed with my first chronic illness at the age of 10. And so about 35 years ago. And I would say, there's so many challenging parts about living with a chronic illness, but I think because I got it so young, it really became such a big part of my identity. And I think, when that's happening at the time, you're not thinking about that. It's just what's happening,
Yeah.
And so it took me a long time to sort of separate my illness, my experience, the truth about, how challenging these experiences were, which was true. But then start to realize who I was outside of this label of this condition. It took me a very long time to realize those separate parts of myself. And so I think one of the most challenging parts is just how consuming it can be. I was just talking to a friend earlier today who just had a pinched nerve. She had a problem with her back. And this isn't a chronic thing. This is kind of a new thing for her. And she was dealing with that for the whole week this week. And she was sharing with me that it took so much out of her to be experiencing that level of pain. And I think when you're going through something, a lot of times people don't know how to process all of that at the same time, right? It's you're going through it, you feel bad, you feel like you're kind of failing at everything because so much is happening and you're not really able to keep up. And then on top of that, you're in pain too. And so all of that happening at once, I think, can be really challenging for anyone living with a chronic condition. But learning how to sort of go beyond that is really what I think is possible for a lot of people.
Yeah, because on one side there's the physical pain.
Yeah.
On the other side, there's the mental part that people go through. So which one is the hardest one?
I think because I've dealt with so much physical pain, I think I can handle that in a lot of ways a lot more easily because I've just had to deal with it for so long. And I kind of know, okay, I have to power down a bit. I have to just move through this moment. It'll pass. I have a bit of trust almost in the physical aspect of things because I've just endured a lot physically. But when the mental comes in to play, and I have so many tools, we'll obviously talk about all the ways that I've navigated this mentally, but even it doesn't always work. It's not I'm a superhuman and I don't have the same insecurities or fears or just edges, And so when I come up against those edges and I come up against that fear, it can feel like it's never going to end. And I think that thought process in particular, I'm in pain right now, I'm having a hard time, or things are really hard. Is this how it's always going to be? I think that question and that loop is something that a lot of people struggle with, myself included.
What are some of the thoughts that were coming through your mind?
Yeah, I think it really is that I got diagnosed with a third chronic illness a few years ago. And it was a bit of a scarier condition. It was a neuromuscular disease, and it changed me in a lot of ways.
Mm.
It had me face things that I hadn't faced with the other conditions that I had gotten.
Oh, you
And
mean physically?
physically, which then led to like mentally and
Yeah.
emotionally as well.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening during that time, I had founded a company to help people with chronic illnesses. I'd been this advocate. I'd been like, talking about my chronic illnesses, like, we can do this, guys, like, it's going to be okay. And then I got that diagnosis, and it knocked me off my feet, because I started to feel like my life was changing kind of rapidly. I lost my ability to see properly. I lost my ability to talk properly. I couldn't swallow food for several months. So I couldn't really work during that time. And so then those thoughts came in of like, oh my God, is this it? Like, is this what my life is destined to be? And I had to move home to live with my parents because it wasn't safe for me to live alone.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, like, this was not the plan. Like, this is nowhere close to what I want for myself. So is this what's going to be happening now? And so that's really the hardest part for me, I think, is when you start to have that thought of like, is this it? Is this everything? Is this everything I am? Is this everything my life is going to be? Is this the best my body and I are ever going to have?
Yeah.
That there's not a lot of, just even from a nervous system perspective, when you're in a state of fight or flight, your system really narrows its field of focus. And that's a good thing. That's because it wants you to survive whatever it is that you're going through in that moment, right? That is your system's intelligence, right? But it can be challenging when your field of vision gets so narrow and you start to become so focused on only one aspect or only one thing. So a lot of my work and a lot of the things I talk about is about expanding your focus when it comes to your chronic illness. Yeah.
And so it's interesting that you said like you learn also how to live with the pain, the physical pain. But there was a moment in your life, I read that like at the age of 19, it was even hard for you to open a cereal box.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like how do you go through moments like that?
Yeah. Yeah, when I was I would say about 11, so like a year into my first diagnosis, through honestly like my mid-20s, I was in like severe physical pain, and the moment that you're referring to, when I was 19, I was in my dorm room. My parents were living in Hong Kong. I was in Connecticut going to college, and I had never had any joint pain or anything like that before. And then I went to go open the inside bag of my cereal box, and my hands weren't working. I couldn't open it. And I was young. I had never heard of like anything like this kind of an issue, right? So it was really devastating. And I think one of the things that was really challenging was I didn't really grow up in a home where we talked about like positive thinking or meditation or, how to have like a different type of outlook on life, which my last name is Chopra and I'm Indian. So I feel like everyone always thinks you must have meditated like your whole childhood. I'm like, no, my dad is like, he's a finance guy and like that's not what's happening here. But I did not grow up that way. I grew up a little bit more literally, like things were a bit more literal. It wasn't so much about this spiritual conversation or the what's more. And that meant that when I was dealing with those challenges with my body, I really felt so attached to what was happening in that moment. It was not like I just inherently knew that I could think differently for a long time. And I think it's important to really underscore that, because some people will look online or listen to their favorite podcast and hear the people that they love and admire, and they'll feel like, well, why can't I just, go through this challenge? And how come that person's able to think so positively, but like I'm not able to think positively? It was a skill I had to learn. I had to go to courses. I had to get training. I had to be in programs and really read a lot of books and be confronted with there's another way to look at life. but it wasn't something that came naturally to me. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what came up for me when you asked me about that time when I was 19.
But that was your lowest moment, or no? Or you had?
I'm like, there's been quite a few low moments. I mean, yeah, I think when I was 19 to like 25, I was mostly bedridden during that time. It was really hard for me to be able to walk and move, and my skin, I had psoriasis really severely, and so my skin cracked and bled from the tip of my foot to the tip of my head, sort of like your lips can chap in the winter. It was relentless. And it's the kind of thing where, you know, all the positive thinking in the world, it's not quite enough when you are sleeping.
Exactly.
And scratching and waking up with like bloody sheets because your skin is falling off of you, basically. So I think it's important with a chronic illness conversation. You know, people often like want to create this self-help version of the conversation, right? They want to say, you can just think positively. You can just say this affirmation. And like, haven't you ever heard of The Secret? Like you can just like create your own reality, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I'm so passionate about is a lot of those conversations have gotten this wrong because they're not acknowledging the reality of the physical harm that is being done in the moment. Yeah. So both things can be true, right? I can have more and I can have a broader outlook of my life and start to look at what is really going on here. What are some of those deeper patterns? What is it about me that maybe allowed for this, or this was the best my body could do because of things that were going on inside of me? I can look at that, and I have, and I always will. But I will never look someone in the face who is living with a chronic illness and say that your pain or your flare or your insecurity about what's going on with your body isn't real. And I think that's what a lot of the self-help conversations have done, because they don't want to sit in that. They don't want to face the truth about how detrimental and heartbreaking that really is for someone. I've been sitting in it for 35 years, so I'm happy to do it.
That's beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful, but it's also brutal.
Yeah. No, but I mean, the way you said it's beautiful, like, yeah. I mean, but at the same time, to have the courage to do that, it takes a lot of self-awareness, and it takes a lot of self-work, as you did, right?
Yeah, it's been decades, you know, and I think when I got my third diagnosis a few years ago in 2022, I was diagnosed, but it was after living with a lot of really challenging symptoms for about 6 months. It was a wake-up call because I had thought I had been doing so many things to, you know, be empowered. And if you saw me, I mean, I was the founder of like this huge, you know, company that was pulling together amazing conferences for people who were sick, and we were celebrating each other, and we were rejoicing and feeling empowered. Like that was real, right? So to get this other condition that knocked me down so deeply, I was like, okay, there's something. I'm smart enough to know I'm missing something. Like I thought I was doing all the way to the end kind of work. Like I really got to the point that I needed to get to. And then that happened. And I was like, I'm smart enough to know that I am missing something here. And I think what I had to learn was that I had so much awareness, and maybe you've experienced this too, but I had so much awareness because I had done so much work on myself, as you said. I had, you know, I've been to therapy for many years, which I'm a huge proponent of. I did EMDR. I read all the self-help books. I was trained as a life coach. I have a life coach. All the things. But what I forgot was that my body was storing all of those things. My mind
What do you mean?
So my mind had a cognitive understanding.
Yeah.
When I was sick, when I was 10, this happened. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, I can see when this person bullied me. I can see when I got in trouble. This happened. I can see all of it. But the problem is the body keeps the score, as the famous book says, right? So I was doing it cognitively, which I 100% think is so helpful and so powerful. But my body had not processed it. So
Wow.
my nervous
Really?
system was still, yes, because what people don't realize is that the trauma and the incidents that you've experienced, it's trapped in your fascia. It's not just
Yeah.
like,
Did that
floating
just happen?
around and
Yeah.
then it becomes becomes part of the fabric of your entire body, of your entire system. So if I'm cognitively understanding, great. That is more than a lot of people are doing. So I want that for people. But I also need us to know that that is not enough anymore. Because I don't want us to cognitively understand we had this wound and that had our bodies adapt and create chronic illness, and then for us to stay there. I want us to know that we can live beyond the illness, right? And I don't get to say what that looks like, right? If I meet someone and they have chronic migraines, or I meet someone who has endometriosis, or I meet someone who has lupus, and I have my conditions, my version of what healing and healing is such a charged word.
Yeah.
There's entire industries built on the fake idea that they can heal us and buy more and do more and create more, all the things. It's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about you having agency over what that looks like for you. Not even listening to me or you and saying, it has to be this one way. You have to do it with this particular supplement. You have to do it with this particular book. This is the only way you can have it, and it has to look this particular way. That is not what we're talking about here. This is this process of really knowing yourself. For some people, like someone who has diabetes, it might be that they always have to take their insulin, and it's just a part of their life. But who they're being is not someone who is ill. And that changes everything in their life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Tell me more. Give me, for example, an example of someone that you met or that went through that process, because I think it's so powerful. And I find it's very difficult. It looks simple, but very, very simple to do that shift. Do you have any story or any examples to help us understand the process?
Yes. Well, if I could give my own example.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's a pretty vivid one I can share with you. When I was around 19, 20, until about probably my early 30s, to be honest, because even though I started to physically get better in my 20s, I was not emotionally better. And because I had found a medicine that helped me, right? So I got some relief, which was great. But my emotional state was still very much not well. And if I met you during that time, you would know that I was ill before you ever saw it on my body. Because who I was being was in the deepest parts of my victimhood. Oh, I'm not feeling well. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't go here. Just this really last week you and I were going to record and I actually got a virus and I actually got sick, which has not happened in so long. But there was a very different experience with me having that versus like wearing the illness of like, this is who I am. This is how it is. It's so hard. It's so complicated. It was just like, no, this is what I can do. This is what's great. I'm actually a full whole person who's just having this symptom, and we're gonna work with it and we're gonna keep going, But when I was really in my suffering with my chronic illnesses, I was emotionally wearing my illness all the time. And so you would meet me and know there was something really wrong. And it's not because you could see it on my face or, that my bones were so obviously deformed or something like that. It was who I was being. And so I had to really go through a process of looking at all the different layers of who I am and start to see like, what am I getting out of that? Because it's back to what I said before. If that is how I'm engaging with people, there's something about that feels safer for me to hook you in as someone who will love me because they have to take care of me.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? Instead of being brave and saying like, is Rodrigo going to love me because I'm like just myself? Like, is this person going to just want to be around me because I'm funny, or, I talk a lot and I share a lot of opinions, whatever it is, right? Whatever my personality traits are, my essence. I did not believe that anyone was going to love me for my essence for most of my life. And I think my body was a huge reflection of that for most of my life. And it took that work to reprogram that over the years.
What was some of the self-talk that you were telling yourself? Remember?
Yeah, a lot of the self-talk that I was telling myself during the hardest moments was, honestly, it was such deep self-hatred. And it's a hard thing to admit because I don't think people are as honest about those really dark thoughts as we could be.
Yeah.
But it was really like just constantly questioning myself, constantly, like ridicule, like just like belittling myself. And it was a lot of what I had heard around me growing up, because I was failing or I was getting bullied or I was this or that. So it was a lot of those conversations, but then I wasn't around those people anymore. And I was the one doing it to myself. Right? I was the one sort of beating myself up. I used to say I beat myself up with self-help because I was like, oh, this book, The Secret, told me that I should just be able to like have some thoughts and then like ta-da, right? And so then I felt so bad about myself.
Yeah.
Because I kind of knew like I'm a smart person, like I'm intelligent enough. So like why is this whole industry like a bajillion-dollar industry, exact number, to be determined, but like this massive industry telling me that I should be able to just think my way through this. And then I'm sitting here on the days when I literally feel like a Mack truck is running over my body because my psoriatic arthritis gotten so bad. And my psoriasis, my skin was bleeding just by me walking. And I was in my 20s living in the West Village in New York, right? And I was like, why? There's a disconnect here. Like everyone keeps telling me like this is because of what I'm thinking. But like the reality of the pain that I'm in, it's so massive, So I think bridging that gap, I'm really passionate about helping people bridge that gap because I don't think that a lot of people are willing to like sit with you in your suffering and be okay with it.
Wow.
Like, wow, this person's really breaking down right now. They really believe this is the best that it's ever going to get. And I so have freaking been there and let's go. It's okay.
Wow.
And then say, I'm going to love you through this part. And I'm also going to let you know there's a little bit more here for you. Let's just widen the aperture a little bit, right? And that's why I talk about, like self-love. And I talk about, people are probably so freaking tired hearing people talk about self-love. And I really get it. But I am sort of like, I don't care because I think self-love definitely has saved my life. But it's not the self-love that I was taught in the books. It's like my own version. And I think that is just, it can be life-changing when you're sitting there and you're beating yourself up so much. No one actually can really save you in those moments. I've tried. I've been in those moments where I am reeling and I am just spinning from, usually it used to be from like a bad breakup or something. I just feel like, when you feel that, you feel like you don't have separation from someone and then the breakup happens and the separation is 10 times louder. That used to really set me over the edge. Not so much anymore, thank God, but it used to. And so I remember so many of those moments where I would be spinning and just being like, someone help me here, someone. No one really ever could. It's not like they couldn't love me and be kind and nurture me and, maybe say, hey, let's go for a coffee. Let's, do something fun. But I was still going home to myself, right? So loving myself as a true act every moment of every day, I think is one of the most beautiful things that you can do for yourself. But it's a practice,
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that and so open. It looks like what you're saying, you talk a lot, and even you start this conversation about talking, there's a certain feeling of injustice. Why me, right? There's an injustice, and then starts a separation, because okay, why me? And there's me, and why me? And there's the others. That's the first thing that I got from you. The second, there's a lack of self-love, of self-believing. You start to give in to the illness, right? But for you, what happened? I mean, for you, it was so severe and it was so intense for so many years. And you said that what helped you was this part of self-love. Do you remember that moment that things started to click with self-love? Remember that?
Yeah, I think it was layer by layer. I'd love to say, oh yeah, Rodrigo.
Yes, it was this book
this is the soundbite you can use. It's this perfect moment. But it was honestly, if I'm being totally honest, like it was layers of trying and failing a lot and feeling like this isn't it. When you're trying to just like get, I don't know, like a recipe, right? And you just keep tweaking things and you're just like, this isn't quite, it's not quite there. It's not quite there. I felt like I was having that experience with self-love a lot because I kept, as I said, hearing people telling me it's supposed to be this one thing, like go drink that green juice and you'll be loving yourself. Yeah. Or go to your hot yoga class and like you will love yourself by the end. And I was just like, okay, like I'm going to go and do this thing and I'm going to like, say this mantra and I'm going to do this and that and whatever. And then I was like, I freaking hate myself right now. Like I don't love myself at all. What is this bullshit? Everyone keeps telling me that this is what it is. So it was a lot of that. And then I would say in my later 20s, once I, finally my body started to calm down a little bit, I could think a little bit more clearly. And this is like a whole other tangent, but this is part of why I'm a proponent of if you need to take the medicine, take the medicine.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, again, they don't know how to hold the nuance, right? It's like either you're, evolved and you don't take any medicine and you're this and you're that. It's not. Okay, it's not that. I don't believe in that at all. And I don't believe that we should have crutches and that we should blindly take things and we shouldn't be aware, or that we should take things and not understand the holistic aspect of what is happening in our body. But for me, the medicine at the time gave me the opportunity to think about other things than my pain.
I see, yeah.
And I think people don't think about that enough, right? So that was huge for me. And once I started to be able to hear and see other parts of my life, other parts of my experience, I just started to see that self-love is about a moment-to-moment commitment. And that I actually created my own definition of self-love because I felt like every other definition was complete BS. And I was just like, this isn't making any sense. Like you guys are selling me the end result.
Yeah.
That's not what self-love is. Self-love, what I say, is it is basically a desire or commitment. I'm forgetting my own definition. Self-love is being more committed to your happiness than to your suffering in every single moment. And I say happiness because I created this when I was in my 20s, and that's what resonated with me. But for some people, it might be, self-love is about being more committed to my peace than to my suffering. Self-love is about being more committed to my highest self than my suffering. But in every single moment, people forget that part.
Yeah.
And I'm frustrated for people that they forget that part or that they've been sold that self-love is going to that one yoga class or doing something one time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no wonder we're all frustrated and upset. No wonder we constantly feel like we're missing something. We're missing the mark. We failed, which only perpetuates more of the harm that we've already experienced. And I'm like, no, this is because it does not happen in one moment. Our bodies are holding so much and we have to be with that. And for many of us, it's been holding so much for decades.
Yeah. Wow, I think what stayed with me is like when you gave the example of like, of course, when this happens, you get so focused on that, the lens, like the aperture, it gets so focused. Yeah. And what you say is like, if you at least open a little bit, whatever it is, like what you said, like for some people can be just go on that app, on that dating app, just start that business, talk to that person or whatever it is. It just widens a little bit, and also it's about thinking about, is there something else beyond what I'm thinking, what I'm living, beyond this, what I'm experiencing now. And that's what you say. And then people go in that inner journey of curiosity, of exploration and self-awareness, right? That's what you're saying. Wow.
Can I say something to that, actually?
Yes. You can, please.
Okay, because yes, everything that you just said, yes. And what comes up for me when you say that is, people will say sometimes like, just try this, just try that, right? What I want people to know is that it is fair if your body is in such a state of fight or flight.
Yes.
That even the idea of just try this, just try that is out of reach.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm saying if you can start there, fine. Let's start where you are. My biggest wish for someone in that place, which I have been in that place many times, is to be open to becoming the observer.
Yeah.
Okay, I just got to chill throughout my whole body, is become the observer. You do not have to do anything else. So that can then give your body permission to say, you know what, I'm going to take that mental health walk around the block. I'm just going to come right back home, but I'm going to take the mental health walk around the block. I'm going to send that text message to my best friend and let her know, like, hey, can we have a FaceTime date later? But when you're in such a state of fight or flight and that, field of vision is so small, you're not like trying to figure it all out. You're just trying to survive. And that's your body's intelligence, right? And that's the piece I think that was so liberating for me to understand, because as I've explained, I felt so guilty so often for not being able to do more, for not being able to figure this out. Why are all these people telling me that I'm supposed to be able to just like do some downward dog and drink this juice and whatever, and then like all of a sudden things are going to be okay? And I really don't feel that way. So I think understanding it from this perspective can be so healing and loving and kind to yourself. So when I say, focus on self-love, I think about it in a few steps. And the first is always just start to name where you are. You don't have to even change it yet, right? So when I'm in my bed and when I was going through the hardest moments, just naming, I feel like this is never going to end. I have started to convince myself this is never going to end. I am starting to believe this is never going to end. I feel like this is never going to end. I promise you, just being able to say that starts to put some distance between that being true and what is actually happening in this moment. You start to create distance. And what people don't realize about self-love is that it's not about these items or these things that you're going to check off of your list. It's about not abandoning yourself.
Wow.
That is what I want people to know. Stop having people tell you that it's about this idealized version of connection with yourself. I don't want you to abandon yourself. When you are going through a flare and you are laying in bed or you are in your home and you are feeling like everything is at the bottom and you don't know how you're ever going to get up, which we have all been there, some of us more times than others, I want that person to know this is an invitation to not abandon myself. Oof. Could you imagine? I'm sorry, I'm saying that to myself. When I was 20 years old and I was bedridden and I was feeling like nothing was ever going to be okay, and I was also physically feeling so much pain, if I had just known this is a moment where you don't have to abandon yourself. So just naming what is happening creates that space. It starts to put you in the position of the observer.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, what's really exciting is that your nervous system physically can start to shift.
Wow.
Because you become more in the present moment. You stop being in the future, right? Or even in the past. That's happened a lot, right? Oh my God, I'm here again. This happened to me in, college when this thing happened. And what if this is how my life is forever? What if this is the best it's ever going to be, right? Those are both past and future, which just means that you're physically like not in the present moment, right? You're emotionally not in the present moment, which is always a sign for me I'm in fight or flight. I'm not actually in a parasympathetic state, which is okay. Fight or flight's not evil, right? We have that for a reason. But the more we can kind of support ourselves in being in the present, being more parasympathetic, the more we can start to rewire some of these challenges that we're having physically.
Wow. And that creates a separation with the moment that looks like everything is like, look, one, everything is very real, right? But at the same time, you start to feeling more present, more calm. And there's a separation. And what you say, the nervous system starts acting, right? Starts letting go, right?
It starts being open, right?
Exactly.
Because like when you're in fight or flight, like we talked about,
yeah,
you have such a small field of focus, and it's meant to be that way, right? If my nervous system goes into fight or flight because a bear is chasing me, right? I'm not supposed to be thinking about my grocery list and I need to text my friend back and I need to do this. I'm only supposed to be thinking about the thing that's threatening in front of me, right? So I like to think of it in the sense of like, this is beautiful that our bodies do this. This is so amazing. And when we are in a perpetual state of fight or flight because maybe we're in pain or because we've experienced significant trauma that is now lodged in different parts of our body, it's not actually helping us. We need to start to be a steward in getting us into a more parasympathetic state if we can.
Damn, I thought the first step was that green juice that you were going to say that we can just
Please
go
no.
buy. No?
Please no. I mean, you can have green juice if you want, but it's like not necessarily going to, make you love yourself more.
All right. I love that. So that was the first one. You said like there's a couple of things that people can do.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful. What is something else that people can do in order to have more self-love?
So I like to think of it in 3 steps, right? And there's 1,000 steps you could take, but this is just a place to start.
Yes.
So the first one is to name what's happening in the moment.
Yes.
Right? And we walked through that. The second one I would say is that you want to start having a different physical experience than the one that you're in. And what I mean by that is if you're in severe physical pain, let's say, start to find a way to connect with your body that isn't through pain.
Oh.
So what that looks like for me,
a
lot of times I sit under my weighted blanket. Right? If I'm not feeling well or something's feeling like a little bit off, I will sit under my weighted blanket because it creates really helpful pressure, right? For my system. And my nervous system coach always tells me like it makes my valve system move. It activates different parts of my nervous system. It's good. It's a good experience. Also, people do it when like they're feeling a lot of anxiety and they want to calm themselves down. That's part of why it gets your valve system to work and kind of turn on in some ways. So that's one thing you could do. You could also anything cold activates your vagus nerve. And so you can drink a cold glass of water to activate something else in your body. Some people hold ice and that has them focus on something different physically than the pain that they're in.
I see.
Right? So this is just like another, and people sometimes also will take like a few, seconds of a breath in, a longer exhale, right? Your inhale is 3 counts, your exhale is 5 counts, something like that. So again, it's just connecting with your body physically that's not through the suffering.
To the suffering,
right? And this is not meant to be anything that's going to trigger something that's super hard to do. You could do it laying down, most of these things, right? So what that allows is, again, it starts to shift your state enough. Doesn't mean you go from super fight or flight to now you're like parasympathetic God or something, right? But even if your aperture is widening even just the tiniest bit more, then you can take the third step, which is the part that everyone hears the most about, which is the action that you want to take to show yourself some love. So just like if you were showing someone love that you're in a relationship with or friendship, you would take an action, right? You wouldn't just say that you love them. You would just be like, maybe saying that I love you is a good place to start, but you wouldn't just think it, right? You'd want them to know. You'd want to show them. So start thinking of, and I like to have a list in my phone of like things that I can do that I love that make me feel loved. One of them is like I love to get my nails done. I just love to do it. I don't do it all the time, but I'm like, okay, this is like a fun thing. Or there's a coffee shop literally across the street from my apartment. So even if I'm having a flare or something is going on, I can get there easily. And I just love the vibe there. And so I'll just go, and instead of making my coffee at home, I'll have a coffee there, bring a journal, do something like that. So that's where all those actions come in that people talk about, but they miss the steps before, right? They just expect themselves to be like in their bed in pain, and then all of a sudden I'm having coffee and everything's fine. It's like, no, I want you to shift. I want you to name what's going on. I want you to shift into your body in a way that's not through the suffering. And then I want you to take an action. And you get to decide what it is. It's not something, no one has to even know. It's not some big declaration. Like it's not to be some huge parade, which is, I think, what people like to sell people. But that's not what this is about. It's really about just like you would learn to love, like if you're in a new relationship and you're like, oh, I want to know, does this person like when I call? Does this person like, what are their love languages, right? It's like learning your own love languages when it comes to self-love and being like, oh, I really love when I go to a bookstore and I like browse all the new authors, or I'm like looking through all the cool magazines, and it like makes me, I love going into stationery stores. I feel like women love stationery stores, but I love going into stationery stores. There's a couple in my neighborhood, and I'll just go sometimes, not even trying to buy anything, but I'll just like look at all the different things and the paper and the pens, and I'll be like, oh, this is interesting, or it'll just open my mind up to something new. So that's my 3-step process.
Wow, I love it. So the first step is to start naming or articulating what you're feeling, right? That's the
naming what is happening in the moment.
Exactly.
Naming what is happening in the moment, because I want you to start to become the observer.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of be in the victimhood of it, right?
Yeah. And the second one is to find ways to soothe yourself with something that makes you feel better, that takes away the focus from the pain.
Yeah. I would say it's like the second one is really have a physical experience that isn't through pain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and the third one is about anything that you feel like that you love. You give some love to yourself as you would give to someone else, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that is beautiful. Yeah. So maybe to our audience, anything that you feel like there's some self-love that you love, maybe you can drop it in the comments so that we can all see what is it that self-love for you.
I would love that.
And so now you went through so much. Like, what would be, if you could talk to your younger self just after that you were diagnosed, what would you like to tell her?
Yeah, if I was talking, I just wrote a letter to my younger self yesterday, actually.
Okay, cool. You have it with you?
I don't have it with me, but I did.
Remember?
I was just, I remember. I spent a lot of time throughout my life, as I said in the very beginning, just always feeling that separation from others, right? And it sort of calcified this feeling and this belief about myself that there was really something really wrong with me because I was just always so different or separate. And so if I were to talk to my younger self now, I would just let her know that, like, yes, you are different. You are not the same, especially not the same as most people in your family and the people that you grew up with and the people that you've encountered, at your younger years. But that's actually the most beautiful thing about you. And when you can learn to own that about yourself, your whole life is going to change. And I would just let her know, I'm so sorry that this feels so hard. And I understand why it feels so hard. But it's not because there's something wrong with you. It's just because like the world around you hasn't caught up to it yet, and so I would tell her that. I would really just want her to know that, the things that she was told to believe about herself are just it's not the truth. It has more to do with other people's fear than it does to do with the truth about her.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful. So actually, that's a great thing for I mean, everyone to do, like a letter to our younger self, so that we have the opportunity now, whatever we know now, it kind of like, okay, that younger child that were there, the younger self were there, needed to hear that.
Yeah. And I think what I realized about the younger self aspect of things is that, like, so much of our patterning, of course, comes from that time in life, right? So as I am committed to being the fullest version of myself, the most whole, complete version of myself, and I know I have patterning that is subconscious. There's things that I do that I don't know that I do. Like, I'm not fully actualized or enlightened. I'm not at all. And so that's a great way to kind of connect to those parts in like a loving, safe way, right? And not in a forceful, shameful way. And so, that's why I decided to do that yesterday.
Beautiful. So, like, if there's someone who is watching us and is going through a lot, and I mean, I've tried so many things. Like, what is something that you could share with them that can help, like a smallest thing that someone can do, at least just to shift something that can help going to deal what they're going through?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love for that person to think about my definition of self-love. Being more committed to your happiness, your peace, your serenity, your full self in every moment, more than you're suffering in every moment, right? And the reason why is because I think when we're going through something really painful, really big, really devastating, it's not really realistic for us to tell people to get all the way to the end of something so quickly.
Exactly.
Right? So whether it's thinking about that definition or it's just thinking about being more in the present moment or starting to become the observer.
Yeah.
Right? It all kind of goes back to that. I think my whole life started to change when I started to become the observer in my life. And I started to be like, okay, what's going on here? Something's going on. I don't know everything that's going on. And I'm sure when we have this conversation again at some point, I'm sure if we sit down again in 5 years on a reunion episode, I'm sure it'll be like, oh my God, Rodrigo, I thought I knew so many things and I don't even know. I didn't even know these other 5 things that I just realized, because that's what life is, right?
Yeah.
And I think having a little bit of like humility around that, a little, some compassion. But yeah, if somebody's going through the hardest moments, I think in those moments for me, just really acknowledging the truth of what was happening and being kind to myself, it allowed my system to calm down just a little bit more so that I can then take some steps or start to put things into practice.
Wow. So beautiful. Wow, you have a beautiful smile.
Oh, thank you. So do you.
And for people who are watching that maybe they know someone or they are in contact with someone that has a health condition, what is a simple way to support that person?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think one of the biggest things that we can get wrong when people are living with a chronic illness or really feeling devastated by their health is we sort of want, we a lot of times we do 2 things. We ignore what's going on and kind of bypass it.
Yeah.
Or we just like want it to be over and we want to kind of push past it in like the other direction.
Yeah. So
I have found the biggest thing that has been helpful for me is someone who's just willing to sit with me. And it could be in so many different ways, right? Sometimes it's like, I'm just going to FaceTime you. I'm just going to call you. I'm a huge phone person. And I think a lot of that came because I was bedridden for the first half of my 20s. I would just call people and, that's how I would pass the time and I would feel connected to someone. And so I've had friends when I've been really sick. My one friend, Raval, I'll never forget it. I was really, really sick one time. with my chronic illness stuff. And she came over and she is so funny. She's like the brightest light. She's amazing. But she came over, she just sat with me.
Yeah.
And she just made me laugh just by being herself. I didn't,
Wow.
she's not dealing with what I'm dealing with. I don't need her to sit there and like,
Yeah.
you know, give me a cold compress or like put something on my skin, or I don't need any of that. Most people with chronic conditions, we got our stuff handled, right? We kind of are we have superpowers with that. But I just need some company. I feel, you know, it can feel so lonely. And then a lot of times what happens, I was talking to somebody earlier this week about this who was going through a health crisis. And it's just like, it's only your body that's going through it right at that time. So it can feel just so isolating. And then a lot of times when we go to talk to someone about it, they're just kind of like, I don't really know. And they don't want to go there. They don't want to just sit with us. Right? It's like you can almost think about it when someone's grieving, right? We say with grief, you know, it's just relentless. When you are grieving something really big, and it could be grieving a divorce, it could be grieving, you know, a change of job, it could be grieving a loved one, it's relentless. It doesn't have like a neat and tidy end date. You know, it doesn't have the thing that's like, oh yeah, in 3 months, I'm going to be totally over this, right? Chronic illness is a lot like that. We just want someone to just sit with us. You know, my friend recently lost both her parents, and I don't know. I have nothing to give her. I don't have, you know, I can't become a parent for her. I can't, there's so many things that I cannot do in this situation that's going to change what she has to sit with. But I can sit with her. I can call her and I can say, hey, what's going on?
Wow.
Make sure you know you are not alone. You know, I've got you. What does that look like for you today? Are you home? Do you want me to come sit with you? You know, and sometimes we can't physically do that, but we can call. I think the avoidance that people have a lot of times when someone's going through a hard time is so painful for those of us on the receiving end of it. If you could just sit with us, it creates that more. It widens the aperture in a way where we can see what else is possible. It's really life-changing.
Yeah, and it's also not like about talking about, like, person doesn't need to, oh, it will be okay, or no, it's not like, because otherwise it goes on the other direction. It's just being there, you know, and even if it's just that presence that goes in another direction and just widens a little bit the moment. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I don't want to end this conversation to talk about something which I think it's really, really important, which is about, well, actually there are two things. One is about the chronic illness is growing so fast today. And I would like to hear your thoughts about prevention, because we're talking about how to handle it. But a lot is about, of course, it's about prevention, you know. And so, what are your thoughts about what can we do in order to prevent chronic illness? And of course, you're not a doctor. We know you're not a doctor, but you've read a lot. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, well, you know, the statistics are that over 133 million Americans have a chronic illness. Wow. And that number that's an old number, honestly, and it's just growing since the pandemic and everything. So yes, this is rampant. And so in terms of prevention, I personally, knowing what I know in my own experience, would say that I want people to really be able to go deep with themselves and sit with themselves and see where are the places in their life that they are still in like a high avoidance or overriding pattern, right? And that can show up. That's a very fight or flight thing to avoid, to freeze, collapse, you know, go into that fight or flight mode. And I think that we are doing that so often, and way more often than we even realize, because so much of it is normalized, right? Oh, I'm just like type A, or I'm on Wall Street and I'm doing this thing, or I'm hustling because I'm an entrepreneur, or whatever, like those different like tropes that we have, right? And so I would love for people, everything always for me comes back to like being the observer, Just, God willing, you're healthy and you're doing well and things are going great and you feel like you're on that trajectory. That's awesome. But if you really want to focus on prevention, I would start to see where are those moments in my day where I'm overriding my needs. Having good boundaries, I think, is honestly one of the biggest health flexes you could do, because people override themselves so often.
Exactly.
Do not have boundaries, and that seeps into our systems. It absolutely does. It's something that when I was saying that, I see this with all of my clients, like not like using their chronic illness to get their needs met in some way, subconsciously, they do not know that. And most of them, they're all incredibly brilliant and smart, but it's just it's the way that we were taught. I mean, I did the same thing, right? But so much of that starts with, I'm not saying what I actually need. One, I don't even know what the heck I need, right? So there's all of these, and when I say needs, I'm really talking about the ways we get emotionally nourished, and sometimes that could be, I need more sleep. I need to not be on the phone so late at night. I need, more play, more joy. It can be so many different things depending on the person. But I think that, people really understanding that ecosystem for themselves of what am I looking for in terms of emotional nourishment? How am I moving through that in my life? And what are the boundaries that I'm missing that are not supporting me in this way? I mean, I don't think any nutritionist or doctor would say that this is like a chronic disease prevention, but this is what I would say would be for prevention. For
think because there's a lot, studies that say there's a lot of, it comes from traumas that we didn't process.
Yeah.
And that what you're saying is like, if we override things, there's stuff that is going to stay in our body, in our nervous system. And that's where it starts to develop the illness. So I think it's a good advice. Wow, that is so good. How do you feel now when you talk about this, about what we've been talking about? How do you feel?
Because I was nervous before?
No, you were not nervous. But how do you feel?
Like, how do I feel? I feel great. I feel it was really exciting to be able to share all of these things in one place. I feel like I share a lot of these concepts and ideas with this community or this client or this person, but to share it all like this was really fun. Really meaningful for me.
Okay, so if there's one thing that you would love people to remember from this conversation, what would it be?
Oh, that's a big question. Oh my goodness, we talked about so many things.
Yeah, one thing.
I think the one thing that I would want people to know is that self-love and the ability to really love yourself is not something that you get from the outside, from these outside actions. I think people have been sold a lot of misconceptions around self-love, and that's why people are so sick of hearing about it. But it really is this moment-to-moment commitment to not abandon yourself. And that looks so different depending on whether you're navigating a chronic illness or you're navigating a divorce or you're navigating, wanting to follow your dreams. It doesn't look just one way, but I think having people know that it is about not abandoning yourself is a game-changing thing.
Wow. And I think that's the what I got from this conversation, and it's in our power that we can do that, because we have the power in every moment to take that decision every moment. Wow. All right. And to finalize, I have one more question.
Okay.
What is something bigger for you?
Oh my God, something bigger. Like, what do you mean?
What does it mean for you?
Okay, what does something bigger mean for me? Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm a very spiritual person. My spiritual connection has changed and evolved over time. But I would say that, it makes me emotional when I think about it. Like when I connect with somebody, when I connect with a person, I feel like I can see the whole universe in them.
No.
Truly, and that to me is something bigger. I don't totally understand it all the time. and I do like to know things. Like I like to understand things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of one of those things where I'm like, oh gosh, when I look into your eyes, I'm like, oh my God, I see the whole
Wow.
universe. And then it just makes me feel like like we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna be okay. Like it's whatever is ailing us, like it's gonna be okay because like the whole universe is in there, And I forget to do that for myself, which is why I talk about self-love so much because it's something I have to practice. But that's what something bigger is to me.
Wow. I was not expecting that.
Really? What do people usually say?
No, they say so many things, but you went beyond. So beautiful. Wow, that was so beautiful. This conversation was very beautiful. I think I admire your courage to share so open and your vulnerability, but also how you keep, I think, your energy and you keep that so optimistic and keep moving forward with so much grace. And so I appreciate and I enjoyed this conversation. So for everyone at home, this was not a medical conversation. It was just someone, not medical advice, but just someone sharing their journey. And there's so many people out there. And I think we all can learn from each other. And she has a beautiful journey with all her ups and downs. But I hope you got something from our conversation. Yeah?
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be here.
My honor.